dude, Boss Rider here. Welcome to my review for Kamen Rider Gavv 27. So we pick up from the little cliffhanger we got where Hanto finds out that Suga has been behind the dark treats. He kind of loosely confronts him and he's like, hey, we got aligning goals, it's fine. Let me fix you up a cocktail of terrible gachizo. And then he runs out of there, winds up passing out. He's found by Shoma and Sachika, and of course, Shoma doesn't know any of this, so he's like, let's take him to Suga. He's like, no, he's bad news. So they go to the uncle who treats him, and something I have to say I really liked, and it's kind of tied into something else I want to talk about, but I was curious, I'm like, oh my god, is Hanto going to freak out? Because even though he obviously is accepting of Gavv because he's his friend and he's half human, I'm like, how's he going to accept a full-on Granite treating him? And I'm thankful it was only a split-second reaction. I guess I shouldn't be surprised because for the most part, the reactions in this have actually been very human and balanced and mature, but I thought like, oh my god, he's gonna fly off the handle, and I'm glad that he didn't. However, speaking of that, I wanted to bring this up at the beginning before I forgot. We've had this whole thing where all three riders kind of have ailments. We find out with Hanto's it's because this particular strain of gachizo puts, well, a strain on his implant thing for the the Granite DNA or whatever. And we don't know what Vlam's is. I'm going to presume it ties to some sort of nefarious means that Neville has, probably for some aspect of control. And then we have Shoma, who's had a hard time passing out, be tired. He can only use the ice cream form. And it turns out it really is just because he's been kind of at odds mentally because of his disagreement with Hanto. I thought it was going to be something more. I'm slightly disappointed. However, the more I thought about it, I'm glad that it's not a third thing that's sort of similar to what's going on with Hanto and Vram. Maybe that'll change, but the only thing I have mixed feelings really about that is we had this whole build-up with the whole Hanto-Shoma conflict of him keeping secrets, and I was pleasantly surprised in a way how mature he was about it. However, with all the build-up, I was surprised how fast it went. Like I said before, it was an episode and a half, really only extended by the fact that we had bitter Gavv confusing things. But now we have him at odds with Shoma because of the backstory about his mother, which I get in a way, but I just feel I would be more upset about Shoma lying to him in the present than something he did when he was a kid that he literally had nothing to do with. He had no idea what was going on. So I don't know. It just kind of bothers me a little bit, how long they've dragged this out, because I don't know, it just bothers me. It feels like it's at odds with how mature he's been with everything else. I get it's kind of tied to his mother's mystery, but it just feels so weird for him to be lingering on something that's like even more not Shoma's fault. Like I think either way, I don't want to see the conflict dragged out, and I don't think there's a reason for them to be at odds. But he was more in the wrong, Shoma, where he's actively lying to him in a way, than when he was a kid and he had nothing to do with it. And I'm just surprised how long they've dragged that out. But anyway, while he was passed out, you have Homa. Is that the ship name? Shoma going to see Suga, and he gets kind of like kidnapped by Dark Gavv and all that, and he gets lured to a conflict. And this is when we find out that all the research for Suga has been leading to this new rider form, Kamen Rider Bake, which is kind of a cookies and cream coated Gavv. Now don't get me wrong, I really do like it. However, I'm a little disappointed because I think there was potential to either have an evil version of Vlam, because he does have Vlam's tension device, and then you have two kind of dark Vlam and Gavs. I thought that would have been cool. But also, I think it would have been even cooler for it to be more of a hybrid between Valen and Gavv, but like a dark version, mixing a little bit of dark Gavv in there. Just because I think the idea of him using Valen as a test subject and then Bitter Gavv as a test subject and then those two fusing together, kind of creating an evil type dead heat situation, I thought that would have been a little bit cooler. Kind of a nitpick, but I still do like the suit. And I like Suga as a villain. I like that we have kind of this third party, obviously very tied to the Gachizo and Granite that's going on, but it's not like he's a branch of the Stomach family. It makes it feel a little bit more almost comic booky, where you have multiple different villains instead of just the one villain group. And there's a lot of mystery around him too. Like he talks about how he's been sacrificing people for years, like test subjects before Valen, for 20 years. And I'm like, this dude's got to be 30. And then at the end, it shows transforming, takes it out of him, and he starts to shrivel up a little bit. So really curious about that. Is he a Granite or some other race? Or I don't know. I'm really interested in that. I wasn't expecting that because I still don't know his motivations. Like, obviously, he's been experimenting and curious about the Granite and Gachizo technology. He's probably not a Granite. That was a dumb thing, because then he could just create his own stuff, couldn't he? Anyway, it's just really interesting, because the only thing we really know about him is he's been working towards this rider system, but we don't know exactly why, what his interest in Stomach Inc. and all this is, and now the fact that he's presumably somehow like sort of immortal or old or something is really interesting. And I like the way that they set him up too, with the backstory about his experiments and the fact that he actually kind of lured Hanto into his backstory by pushing him over the edge by having death of his mentor orchestrated. And it kind of reminded me in a way, obviously very different situations, but of, my god, I'm forgetting I'm forgetting the name of the dude at the moment, but the Watcher character from Gates. I always mess up Geats and Gates. Geats, that was like trying to get Tango to become a writer, like a true writer, and set up like a tragic backstory for him. I just couldn't help but think of that. But the bottom line is I like the way they're setting him up as a villain in a way that hopefully won't be a redemption. I don't know whether... Does he count as the fourth rider? I guess it depends on what role in the show he plays, because he's definitely a villain rider right now, but I think they set him up in a way that I don't think you could do a redemption story. I'll be curious where Dark Gavv goes from here as a suit. Are they just gonna let it fall away and just be clones? Is someone else gonna pick up the mantle? Are they gonna have one of the clones become sort of more self-aware and help them at some point? I'll be really curious, because it seems like kind of a waste of a suit just to be the clones. Not that I minded that, but just because we've been kind of leading up to the debut of Bake, I'll be curious what Dark Gav's role is in the show from here. We did set up for, I think, Valen's next new form, is they call Lakia and like, hey, we need to investigate your little pudding cup things. And it's really funny because I think if I remember right, they're all like arguing on the phone with him and he just hangs up on them. And then he does show up, and they're apparently going to use that to create a new system that will be less strenuous on him, which is interesting. Also, I really like Sachika being involved. I'm so glad that's finally over with, like her not being in the loop, and the way we have all these characters working together just feels right. I just really like that. Last small note, probably actually the most important thing, is in the scenes at the beginning when Hanto is passed out, you have the Gachizo running on a little hamster wheel, and I thought that was adorable. But yeah, overall, great episode. Added some new layers of intrigue with Suga's age and whatnot, so I'm really interested to see where things go from here. Really crazy that we're over halfway through the series. Like, I feel like I've just been so kind of locked in with the show that compared to last year where I'm like, when are we going to get the new rider already? Like, I wasn't even thinking about that, and we just got the name for the new rider, and it's crazy that we're so far into it. I'm excited for new rider always, but I'm definitely going to be sad to see this end. I mean, we still got a good amount of time, but still, it's like, man, 27 episodes already? It feels like we just started, and yet when you think about it, I'm like, yeah, a lot has happened. I mean, we have like 5 riders now. Anyways, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.